Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host Ren, and today we continue with the Belmont Saga, Part 1, Chapter 2, The Lantern. So last week, we concluded the first book in the Belmont Saga, Sands of the Solar Empire, and proceeded immediately to Book 2, Against the Juries, and just pretend that you're a time traveler and you time warp across that year and a half. Gulp. It's simply the turn of the page. How impressive is that? We see Stenstrom after he rescues Tara and Aram and they get the Seeker back on course. He's feeling the weight of the situation. They're in a shut down ship flying backwards at a relatively slow speed for a warbird. He's got air, but it's stale. He's got no amenities whatsoever. They don't even have a whole lot of food other than what they stole from the dry dock. He's also got Lieutenant Gwendolyn after him, and he even saw her in the lantern's light, coming out with her sword drawn and her weapons run out, gunning for him, no doubt. And he feels responsible for Tara and Aram, and he feels guilty that he's put them in this situation. So he says, let's just end this. Let's just go back to Cana. You two should be okay. It's me they want. And I'll be okay too, because I can buy my way out of this problem. But Tara and Aram show a lot of gumption and resilience. And Tara's like, hey, you know, I want to be here. I've spent my whole life digging for clams in delinquent farms on Baz. I was always the screw-up of my family. No one thought I'd amount to anything. I joined the Marines, kind of because I had to, or I was going to go to jail. And when I'm in the Marines, I'm a slothful Marine. My fellow Marines don't like me much because I get them into trouble all the time. But here, I'm something. I'm a valued member of a crew, a small crew on a dead ship, but still, and I'm doing things I never thought I could do with the help of Aram's Molly around her neck. She's using a sextant that she made. She's doing computations. She's doing all kinds of stuff, and she's actually enjoying this, even though it's stinky and dark and cold and filled with ghosts. This is where she wants to be, and she impresses that upon Stenstrom. And then Aram says, you know, the little guy from the Admiral's office, the milquetoast guy, the spineless guy everyone thinks. He's like, you know, after I've laid my hands on the wheel, even though it's a dead wheel, a dead ship, it's still turning the wheel. It's what I've always wanted to do. My family comes from the sea, but I am a guy of the air, of the sky. I love to fly. And after turning the wheel, I don't think I could go back to the Admiral's office. I just don't think I could. And Stenstrom, seeing this, takes heart. He's like, okay, all right. If you two are game, let's do this. And they buckle up for their trip to Baz. And that's where we start now. We had a peremptory throwaway chapter where I kind of sum up the events of the first book, but now that is over with, and we get to Chapter 2, The Lantern. And we know all about the lantern now, don't we? This mystical item created by the elders long ago, item of untold arcane power. We've seen just some of it, and we haven't really gotten a glimpse of the lantern's personality much. It has its own will and its own drive, and it pretty much makes its own decisions, despite the sisters claiming ownership of it. Remember, this thing orbited Cana as a moon and was the second brightest object in the sky. They called it the Gala's Eye. I love stuff like that. I love little backstory stuff. So the lantern was orbiting Cana until the sisters pulled it out. But even with it gone, its light remained as a great white streak going across the sky. That Holt of the Mountain used, according to his lore, to find his way through the mountains and escape the High Tath hordes. Anyways, let's proceed immediately. This is a longish chapter. It's about 12 or 13 pages. And let's see how the adventure... And let's see how the voyage has been to our three fearless sailors in space. Part 1 of Against the Juries, Chapter 2, The Lantern. God damn it! This piece of goddamn shit! Came an echoing voice. Aram covered his ears and Stenstrom shook his head. Such language, truly shameful. All things considered, they weren't doing too bad on the Seeker. They'd been through quite a bit since boarding the tumbling, silent hulk of the ship several days earlier, crashing through a large window in their gasping suborbital, praying to creation that the ship's emergency shutters would close and seal the hole they'd made. Fortunately for them, it did. They'd gotten used to the stale air and slightly stuffy interior of the ship due to the excellent insulation of the Seeker's armor. They were amazed how quickly they could learn to do without such essentials as running water, hot meals, clean clothes, and a warm bed. Tara did fairly well curled up at the padded missive station's chair, while Stenstrom and Aram had to make do with uncomfortable chairs and sometimes the unyielding floor. There was one thing, however, they couldn't live without. They were in Stenstrom's office just off the main bridge, a place glittering with fresh starlight and steady lighting. The bridge and the office were their home base, using all the improvised bits they'd collected from the dry dock. The only thing they lacked was running water and a working toilet, as answering the call of nature was a long, inconvenient process walking through the unlit, noisy bowels of the ship, which none of them really wanted to do. Getting the bathroom in Stenstrom's office working was a top priority, and they'd been hard at it all afternoon since the last Westminster engine burn. The pristine commode that once resided in the captain's bathroom had been removed by the Admiralty, leaving a bare, surprisingly large hole and unappealing smells. The three of them, under Tara's direction, had managed to get the water lines to the bathroom working by sacrificing a bit of generator power and connecting up a condenser on Deck 6. Of course, Tara had no knowledge of engineering or shipboard plumbing. She was wearing Aram's Molly, a mystical charm that allowed one to know things one shouldn't know, and to do things one shouldn't be able to do. Aram was too bashful to use it himself, as the Sisterhood of Light required registration before using it, so Tara, unafraid, was game to try, and the knowledge it gave her was invaluable. The price for using it unabashed and unregistered, Aram said, would be a demon hungry for her soul. It had been a great deal of tight, grungy work, crawling through the maintenance shafts, hooking up lines and hoses, and turning valves. The plumbing system on a starship was a complicated tangle of positive and negative piping, relief hoses, valves, nitrogen tanks to aid in maintaining pressure, and so on. Tara sometimes got a little cross and impatient as Stenstrom and Aram fumbled around and started yelling. People from Baz had a reputation across the league for coarse language and raised voices, and Tara was proving the notion to be true. She yelled at Aram when he misconnected a hose, calling him some choice Baz names, and hurt his feelings. Hey, she said. I didn't mean anything. That's how we talk on Baz. We do a lot of yelling. I didn't mean anything by it. You know I love you guys. Listen, if I make you mad, just yell back, that's all. She hugged him and the matter was forgotten. Later, they crowded into the bathroom, the three of them staring at the fine pewter faucet like it was some sort of pagan altar ready to spew fire. Well, come on, let's do this, Tara said, and Stenstrom opened the faucet. They listened to the network of pressurized pipes groan and then marveled as clean water gurgled into the basin. It was cause for celebration, lots of hugging and splashing of water. Now, for the star of the show, the commode. The Admiralty had done a smashing job of removing every toilet, head, and potty trench they could find from bow to stern. Tara, with her mollied-up smarts, had worked up plans for connecting a sink to the head and supplying it with a trickle of water to flush it out. But then Stenstrom had a mind wave. He remembered Lieutenant Kylos, the former first officer of the ship, once talking about a secret head near the main mess, installed for the captain's private use during important functions, when excusing oneself for protracted periods might not be possible. It didn't appear on the blueprints for the ship and was a custom edition built specifically for Captain Davidge, as Lord Milos Probert, the ship's designer, was a close personal friend of his. Kai used to say she'd hide out in the secret potty from time to time when she wanted to be alone, sneaking in when nobody was looking, and she'd have a nice, long, relaxing constitutional, free of people bugging her. Such a prize, if it was still there, was worth a plunge into the dark, and they made the long, disturbing trek through the unlit back section of the ship to the mess, the place of their initial entry days ago. The trip was like walking through a haunted wood at midnight. The inky black of the ship was squalid with ghosts and noises. Stenstrom remembered the last time he'd plunged into the darkened reaches of the ship. Tara and Aram missing. The corridors overrun with soul devourers. Their horrid touch. Their tittering. Starving for his soul, which his mother had promised them. And then Lily appeared from the dark. Lily, his Lily, a talented but mundane girl from Gamboa his mother had selected for him years earlier. His mother had wanted a distinctly non-arcane girl to balance his forays into the mystical realms, and Lily fit the bill perfectly. She seemed as normal as a girl could get. But then there was Lily, emerging from the dark in the bowels of the ship, carrying an arcane lantern, smiling as if there was nothing odd or unusual about appearing from nowhere when she should be thousands of stellar miles away back on Cana. "Belle, don't I always arrive when you need me most?" she had said. Once they arrived in the mess, they found the remains of their destroyed suborbital mangled in the corner, along with the all-important case of brandy bottled at the home of Admiral Derleth himself. The brandy was his cargo. He had to deliver it to a ball at Teflagar Martin II on Baz in 12 days, otherwise his appointment to the chair of the Seeker would be lost. Given the barely habitable condition of the ship, the brandy had been largely forgotten in the last few days. They had left it where it sat. A disturbing display awaited them as they arrived. There were fresh footprints dotting the mess area, clearly visible as clean spots, and the thin layer of grime covering the floor. They scampered along, creating a crazy trail, going this way and that along the floor, in and out of the remains of the suborbital, and even up the walls. "What are these?" Aram asked with trepidation. Stenstrom inspected the footprints. Bare feet with hints of claws. "Soul devourers," he announced. They had been all over the ship, conniving in the dark, starving for his soul. "Yarsa!" they had screamed. "Do you think there are any more of them hiding about?" Aram asked, somewhat panicked. "I doubt it. Not much for hiding and stratagem, soul devourers. If they were here, they would attack. We would know it by now." "What happened to them?" Tara asked. Lily. She had killed every one of them and pushed their bodies into fanciful positions. Always the artist, Lily. Hundreds of their corpses turning to ash. "I don't know," Stenstrom lied. Tara quickly discovered the secret head off in a corner, and there it was through the hidden door, a pristine commode the Admiralty had missed, a wondrous prize worth its weight in gold. Wringing her little hands, Tara fell on the commode and had it disconnected in minutes, scooting it out along the floor, leaving a trail in the dust. Heavy, the three of them hoisted it up and lugged it back to the bridge. So intent they were with their prize, they barely noticed the voices from the dark cajoling them along the way. Well, what happened to Lily? Where did she go? Aram asked. Where had she gone? Standing on what appeared to be Cana, Lily was about to reveal all to him when a horn sounded, and she shrieked in frustration, tearing at her golden hair. And then Stenstrom had been returned to the airless dark of the Seeker. No, it's not fair, Lily had cried. I thought I'd have more time. Remember, you just extended me your hand, and I'm not giving it back. She was called home, Stenstrom said. Hey, Lily, Tara cried out. We could use a hand, right? This thing's awkward and heavy. Aram was alarmed. Don't call out for her, Tara. She's a demon. Stenstrom took momentary exception to Aram calling Lily a demon. But then, after all that had happened and been done, what else could she be? Why, Belle, of course I'm of the arcane, she had said. Lily, a demon. They hauled the commode up to the low gravity of the lift shaft and into Stenstrom's office. Tara double-checked all the connections before they seated the toilet in place. She quickly got flustered. What's wrong? Stenstrom asked. This damn thing. I can't get pressure. I don't get it. This should be ready to go. Aram leaned over and placed his hand near the mouth of the hole. I don't feel anything. Well, that's just it. There should be negative pressure. You should be feeling a slight breeze sucking everything down the hole to the pipe junction below. All right, you two, out of the way. Tara set back to it and was soon swearing up and down, making both Stenstrom and Aram blush. Why don't we take a break? Stenstrom suggested. No way, Belle. No damn way. This thing isn't kicking my butt. I want this commode working, and then I'm going to celebrate by having a nice long poop. Minutes later, Tara stared at the hole in disgust and pushed her black hair and dangling sideburns from her face. It's like there's something stuck in there. There's got to be a blockage or something gumming everything up. She removed her marine coat and boots. What are you doing? Stenstrom asked. I'm going in. I'm going to fix it. Aram gazed down the tight hole. Down there? Yep. See what things I do for you guys? Huh? She smiled up at Stenstrom, and he gave her trademark Moloch sideburns, a mark of being unmarried on Baz, a yank for luck. It was a ritual they had begun. Without a hint of fear, Tara shimmied into the hole and squirmed down, reaching a T-bend about 2 feet below. She moved her legs into one end of the T-bend and carefully stretched out on her stomach into the other side. Stenstrom watched, fearing she might get stuck. She squirmed around for a minute or two, and then she reacted violently, her body tensing up. They heard the muffled sound of a scream. Stenstrom reached down and grabbed her by her shirt. Tara, he yelled. He pulled back, revealing her head and shoulders, and she clambered out, shaken. She hung on to him. Tara, what happened? What did you see? She sat there a moment and collected herself. Stenstrom drew his pistols and gazed down to the hole, seeing nothing but the pipe leading down to the T-bend. Let me get you some water, Aram said, running out of the office. Tara, what did you see? Stenstrom asked again. Tara composed herself. I saw somebody down there, stuffed into the pipes. Down there? You mean a body? It was alive. A lady, I think, with blonde hair and blue eyes. I remember the eyes. She regained her composure and laughed. Wow, that was a rush. Blonde hair, blue eyes. It sounded like Lily. She looked really, really pissed, like she wanted to get at me or something. She reached out, and that's when I freaked. Aram returned with a bottle of water and gave it to Tara, and she accepted it with trembling hands. As Tara drank, Stenstrom leaned down and listened for the sounds coming from the hole. He heard a tiny noise issuing from the pipes. Tee-hee. Lily? He asked. No answer. Lily? No reply. Her final words to him before she disappeared rang through his mind. I accept. Aram, I'm going to give you one of my ints. I want you to go down there and have a look. Aram swallowed hard. Me? You want me to go down there? I do. I won't fit, and you'll have my ints. The ints can slay anything. Aram didn't want to go. Well, perhaps Tara can... Tara's a girl, and she can't use the ints. They only work for men. He tried to lighten the mood with a bit of levity. You are a girl, right, Tara? Lily. What was Lily? Not a woman. Very funny, she replied. You want to find out firsthand, Belle? With great uncertainty, Aram took off his coat and gingerly lowered himself into the hole, taking Stenstrom's pistol in his little hands. Stenstrom also gave him a yellow holy stone to see. He shook it and was bathed in warm yellow light. Cock the hammer, Aram, Stenstrom said, and don't worry about damaging anything. The ints don't affect inanimate objects. Oh, make sure you don't shoot upwards in our direction. The int shot will go through the floorboards. Aram gulped and worked his way into the T-bend. See anything? Tara called down. He wiggled around a bit and then came back out, his head emerging from the hole. There's, nobody down here. Not that I can see, he said with relief. He waved the holy stone around. You don't see nobody? Tara called down. I don't, and thank creation for that. I do think I see something wedged in the pipe a fair distance away. Can you get it out? Tara asked. Must I? Yeah, if you want to poop any time soon. I'll try. He plunged back into the pipe and worked his way in. A minute or two he re-emerged, backing out inch by inch and holding the end of a glittering golden chain. Stenstrom and Tara helped him out and pulled on the chain. Whatever was on the end of it moved easily. Look at this thing, Tara remarked. Is this real gold? It is. What's it doing stuffed up the plumbing? And look how clean it is. It ought to be crusted with filth. They continued pulling on the gold chain until something large and prickly like a pine cone emerged from the T-bend. What is that? Aram asked, moving the holy stone around. They hauled it up. Dangling at the end of a surprisingly lengthy chain was a brass lantern about a foot long, sporting 4 ovular lenses, one on each side, and a steepled top. The lenses were dark and full of mystery. Belle, is this the thing you were talking about? Tara asked, pointing at the lantern. Stenstrom stared at it. Looks like it, sure enough. This is the lantern Lily was carrying. Lily? You mean the angry lady in the pipes? Tara said. Well, I saw no one, Aram said. Oh, she was there all right, and she brought her lantern with her. Tara took the lantern out of the office and set it on the missives panel. Its flawless lenses were dark and inscrutable. Aram approached and leaned in, adjusting his glasses to get a good look at it. Seems rather sinister to me. And you say, Belle, your lady was carrying this contrivance? Stenstrom agreed. She was. Lily called it the Paramel. It's an arcane object of some sort, and I'm not certain how it works. Seems to function when it wishes. Well, so what's it doing stuffed up our pipes? Tara asked. I've no idea. Aram was nervous and backed away. We shouldn't have this, Belle. The sisters keep tight hold on such arcane things. They might have something to say about it. Well, the sisters have something to say about everything. We should put it back where we found it. Back in the pipes? No way! I want my toilet working, Tara cried. She inspected it, messing with the lenses and tugging on the fittings. She knocked on its steepled cap. What are you doing? Aram cried. Well, I'm just tinkering, she said. The Molly's not telling me much about it. Well, that confirms it's an arcane device. Don't dally with it, Tara, for creation's sake. Oh, relax, will you? Tara! Tara turned from the lantern, sitting innocently on the missive's panel. Okay, whatever. Now let's get back to the damn toilet. If what's-her-name wants to hang out in the plumbing, then I've got a nice little gift coming her way real soon. They went back into the office and installed the commode, muscling it into place, inflating the ring, attaching the lines, and screwing it down. It only took a minute or two. Tara turned the valves and it filled with water. Then they flushed it with a grand celebration, both Stenstrom and Aram patting Tara on the back. Well done, Stenstrom said. This working commode will serve us well and save us a lot of steps. She couldn't help but bask in their praise. As they stood there admiring the commode, Stenstrom noticed something out the window of his office. They turned to the windows. Outside was a dramatic view of the aft of the ship, the long neck and the swan-like rear section with its cranked wings far away. Had the ship been fully functioning, the Seeker would have been lit up like in a cityscape of sparkling lights, random windows burning in a yellowy glow, blinking white light runners mounted dorsal and ventral, and cones of scanner light moving like spotlights along the length of the ship, looking for imperfections in the hull, including the massive main sensor throwing out a great funnel of light ahead of the ship into the night of space. With the ship dead, the lights were all out, and the bulk of the Seeker was like a blackened piece of driftwood in a midnight sea, dappled with stars. At that moment, however, the ship was blinking and flashing at an insane rate like a wild carnival. Window lights snapped on and off. Spotlights panned and then went out, and runners came on and went out in a random grid-like pattern. What's going on out there? Stenstrom asked, taking it all in. Tara? She wandered to the window sill and watched the ship as it lit off like a rolling thunderstorm. Well, it's like power has been restored, but it isn't being properly controlled. I don't get it. Aram peeked out onto the bridge and pointed. Tara? Belle? Look at this. They stepped out of the office onto the bridge. The missives panel was lighting up like a sky full of fireworks. Tara seated herself at the panel and punched buttons. What's wrong? Stenstrom asked. Tara's eyes moved up and down the panel. Her face lit up in a mosaic of reds, blues, and yellows. It's got full power. The missives panel is now fully operational. It's a little messed up without the comm panel to control everything. The comm panel is sort of like the spinal cord of the ship, while the missives panel is like the right side of the brain. It can control much of the higher functions of the ship, such as turning on and off lights, but without the comm panel, it's not very coordinated. So it's turning on and turning off lights all by itself? Tara punched buttons in a flurry, the Molly in her head working overtime. Yep. I'm trying to see if I can get it under control here. Aram watched Tara work. How is the missives panel fully powered? We don't have the energy to do that, do we? Nope, Tara replied. With the Westminster, we have just enough spare power to turn on a few subsystems. Well, so where's the power coming from? Stenstrom turned to the lantern. It quietly sat on the missives panel, its four lenses dark and mysterious. What about Lily's lantern here? He asked. What about it? Tara replied. Could it somehow be imparting power to the ship? I've witnessed this lantern do some amazing things. Stenstrom reached out and tentatively lifted it from the panel. It felt cold and bare metal in his hands. The missives panel immediately went dead. Hey! Tara cried, lifting her hands. I had this baby accepting data. Stenstrom put the lantern back down and the panel sprang to life again. Sorry, he said. So that confirms it. Lily's lantern is an arcane device of immense power. Yes, Aram agreed, which is why we should not be making use of it in any way. The sisters will find ill favor with this. Tara clacked away. The sisters can bill me, Aram. This thing's acting like a supercharger, and with it, we got power to spare. I don't see the harm of making use of a tool that's been given to us. Who gave it to us? Aram asked. Bell's lady, I guess, the lady in the pipes. She stuffed it up our plumbing. Aram crossed his arms. Lily clearly has nothing to do with the sisters, and her having it must be illegal. Belle, we need to get rid of this lantern immediately. We risk the sisters' wrath. Oh, screw the sisters, Aram. You touch that thing and we're fighting. He turned to Stenstrom. Belle? He pleaded. Stenstrom thought about it. He rubbed his chin. Tara, what can you do with the missives panel powered up? What is there to be gained? Well, all kinds of things. I can route power from the Westminster and get the lights turned on. I can get the ship's intercom system running and the security monitors as well. I can also get sensor data going. It'll just take me a little time to get all the kinks worked out of it. I can make this trip a lot easier for all of us, Belle. Trust me. He thought it over some more. Well, I think there's no harm in making temporary use of this device. If it belongs to the sisters, then we'll give it back to them once we arrive at Baz. No harm done. Aram wanted to protest, but Stenstrom cut him off. I'm certain the sisters will be pleased to learn their lantern, assuming it's theirs, helped safeguard the lives of League citizens while at peril at sea. All right, Tara cried. That's what I want to hear. Give me a few hours and I'll have this baby humming. The matter settled, they sat down for some lunch, eating cold Insta-meals that they'd stolen from Dry Dock 275. Tara took her meal and returned to the missives panel, engrossed in what she was doing. She called up several screens and punched buttons in between bites of food. Are you making any progress? Stenstrom asked from his chair. Yep, slowly but surely. I'll have this ship flying right in no time. When's our next burn due? Couple hours. She turned to Stenstrom and gave him a wink, her face framed by her sideburns. I love this, being up here with two handsome guys all to myself and doing all this crazy stuff with the ship. I hope it never ends. Aram cracked into his lunch. Well, you won't be liking it much when the demon comes for your soul. You can't just use the molly all you want without expecting severe consequences. Yeah, I'm not worried. They finished their lunch and with full bellies got sleepy, except for Tara, who was deep into it at the missives panel. She wiggled out of her marine coat and pulled her boots off and sat cross-legged in the seat in her socks, playing the controls like a grand organ. Aram collected their empty Instameal boxes and took them away. He wandered into Stenstrom's office, and a few minutes later, out came the merry sounds of the commode flushing. He returned to the navigator's position, folded his hands over his chest, and was lightly snoring minutes later. Stenstrom sat back in his chair and wanted nothing more than to have a nice long nap. He hadn't had a regular sleep since being aboard the ship. I'm feeling tired, Tara. Stop for a while and get rest, he said. Oh, I'm fine. I want to get this done. Go ahead and sleep, Belle. I'll yell or something if I need you. He resisted the urge to sleep. The last time he'd fallen asleep, Tara and Aram were abducted by soul devourers. He laid his nth pistols out on his lap and struggled to keep his eyes from closing. Tara padded out of her seat and came to him in her socks. She balled up her coat and put it behind his head as a pillow. She lovingly adjusted the silk mask over his eyes and situated the folds of his coat. I've been waiting my whole life to get here, she whispered. This ship is a long way from digging for clams on a Baz delinquent farm. No time to sleep now. She went over to Aram and removed his hat and adjusted his coat, doting on him in a motherly fashion. Sitting in his chair on the verge of sleep, Stenstrom felt very close to Tara and Aram. She returned to her seat, got comfortable, and continued manipulating the missives panel. Stenstrom could only guess what she was doing. It didn't take long for sleep to take him. The last thing he saw was Tara leaning over the panel, lit up in color, her sickle-like sideburns hanging down near her collar. And with that, we conclude Part 1, Chapter 2, The Lantern. So, there it is. Once again, the crazy Paramel Lantern has made its way into the story, stuffed up the plumbing of the ship. It's kind of gross if you think about it, but it came out pristine, not a smudge on it. And Tara, who was working down in the pipes, thought she saw Lily in the pipes, and Lily didn't look too happy. Lily reached out for her, and Tara panicked and screamed, and when she came out, Aram went in with his nth just to protect himself, saw the gold chain of the lantern, and pulled it out, and there it was. And as soon as they sit it down on the missives panel, the whole ship lights up with power. In a romance of the Paramel, as it's known, the various episodes where the Paramel escapes from the sisters and wanders amongst the people. One of them is the romance of the Hyperborea. The Hyperborea was a ship, a Zaffin ship that had been shot down during a conflict with the League. You take your pick which one. There's been a lot. And it managed, or the captain or the crew managed to land the Hyperborea on Midas 6, and it landed it mostly intact, sort of just scraping it along its belly, and it just became like a wreck on Midas 6, a very harsh and volcanic world. Well, there was a rebellion of the people on Midas 6 trying to escape the rude and brusque treatment that the lords of that planet often engage in, escape into the wildlands and find this wreck of a ship. And they get inside to hide. And lo and behold, when they get in, all of its systems power up, and they find out that it's still flight worthy. And they manage to get it off the ship's surface into orbit, and they eventually make their way to a green world where they can get out and live free. Well, the Hyperborea wasn't really functional. It was, once again, the lantern hiding from the sisters. And similar to a fashion here, it provided power to the ship from itself. It just allowed its power to flow into the ship such that the ship could still fly and still support life in space. And that's sort of what it's doing here as it sits on the missives panel. Tara finds that she can do stuff. She can get the missives panel reprogrammed, and she can access things in the ship, and lights come on. It's kind of thing, even though Aram's like, well, we shouldn't use this. This is probably the sisters. Aram is very in tune with the sisters and doesn't want to annoy them if he can. Stenstrom eventually says, well, I don't see the harm in making use of it, and then Tara cheers and she starts programming the missives panel, and then Stenstrom can't take it anymore. He falls asleep. That 20-hour sleep that they had previously wasn't really a normal sleep. It wasn't a cleansing sleep. It was more of an unconscious state, and it didn't really provide them with the rest and recuperation that a normal sleep cycle does. So he's exhausted. He falls asleep. And that's where we end Chapter 2, The Lantern. And as you see at the beginning, there was a lot of recap from the first book. I still had to remind readers of certain things. So the first part of this chapter was just to get some of those reminders out of the way. Next week, we continue Chapter 3, known as 3 Letters. So, we'll see what happens with that. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I'm your host, Ren. Peace out.